we are going to get started. So we had left off last week in the middle of Daniel's prayer. And so I'm just going to go back a couple of verses and start that prayer over again. Okay. So, Daniel went home, told Hananel, Mishael, Zaria, his friends, what was going on and that they should daven. And then Daniel, in a vision of the night, secrets were revealed to him. And so as a result of that, Daniel blesses God. He makes a prayer to God. So it's already been revealed to him, right? And so this is more of a thanksgiving prayer than of a request prayer at this point. And he speaks up and he says, Leveshme, that God's name should be Mevarach min Alma v'ad Alma. The echoes of that are in our Kaddish. Di Chachmata, Gvorta, Di Lehi, that all Chachma and all Gvura belong to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'hu mehashne idanaya v'zimnaya. He's the one, he's Ma'avir Shanim and Zmanim, and right, the day goes, Ma'avir Yom Livnei Laila, etc. All the time of the world is in God's control. Mahade Malchin or Mahaki Malchin. Mahade is like Ma'avir. He removes kings and he establishes kings. Yehev Chakmata Lachakimin. He gives wisdom to the wise. And we said, if you have to be wise in order to receive wisdom, what the heck is going on? And so we heard some Chassidus on that Reshit Chachma Yirat Hashem, it has to be somebody who has Yira of Hashem, it has to be somebody who has Anava, somebody who, in order to be wise, you have to be somebody who is willing to say, I don't know, who's willing to say, I need more wisdom. What I have is not anywhere near sufficient. But somebody who feels like they've already received all that they need and they have gasut ruach and they're arrogant. So such a person, God gives them what they're not asking for, which is actually a lack of wisdom. And then umanda liyade vina, that's like saying da'at, right? The nun in place of the yud for the shorsh of meda. Knowledge, information to those who know how to put things together, how to build ideas. So that's as far as we got. Now, these are the new psukim. We have a couple more psukim of this prayer, and then we're going to move on. He's the one who reveals the depths. And he covers them back over again. Seter. Yadama b'chashocha. He knows what's in the darkness. Unehira or nahora, depending how you want to read it. Ime shrei. And light dwells with him. So, right, Daniel's saying to us, Kadosh Baruch Hu is not like people. I might know what's out in plain view, but something that's in the dark, that's in a hidden place, I don't know. HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows everything. And darkness, like, what does darkness have to do with God? There's a piece in the Gemara in Chagiga where they actually discuss that, because if light dwells with him, then it's never dark. So there's a small piece there in Chagiga. I'm not going to go there and bring all of it, but they quote this verse also as part of their deal. It's part of their discussion. And then the next pasuk is Lach Allah Avahati, right? To you, Elokei Avotai. Okay, avhat is avot. Mahode u'mishabech ana. I give thanks and I praise you. Right? Di chachmata ugvorta yahavatli. That you gave wisdom and strength to me. Yahavat is you gave. That's our shorish forgive, which many people say, by the way, is related to the Hebrew shorish of ahava, because the yud and the aleph can switch there, and that love comes from giving. So not to the point really of Daniel, but it's a language point here. Uchan, this is usually the translation for na, so please. But it also can be, but just as na can sometimes mean please, and sometimes can mean ata, can sometimes mean now. So now, hodatani, because remember we said he had revealed to him in the night, he had already, everything that he needed was already revealed to him. This prayer is not his prayer of request. This prayer is his prayer of thanks. So you have already now made known to me Di be'ena minach, that which I requested from you. Di milat malka hodatana, that the word of the king has now been, I now know. In other words, this thing that the king wants to know about, I now know because you, Hashem, have given it to me. I'm racing a little bit because I'm really hoping that this week I can get through the whole dream. Next week, I'm hoping to bring part of the Perush of the Maharal. He has a very lovely ma'amar called Ner Mitzvah, which is about Hanukkah. And he actually deals with Daniel's vision from chapter 7, Nebuchadnezzar's dream, and Daniel's telling an explanation of it here from chapter 2, Maaseh Bereshit, Brit Bein B'tarim. We're going to see it next week in Mirz Hashem, but only if I get all the way through it. So I'm racing. On the other hand, if I'm saying anything that's not clear, click on the thing to raise your hand, ask a question, so that I make it clear to everybody. Thank you. Okay, so here's the last. So he's finished his thanks, right? And now there's kol kavel dana. I said last week also, this is a bitui. It does not mean everything that was heard about this or something like that. Or everything that was received. Kol kavel dana means ba'avurza, for it as a result of all of this, or lu'umatza. But it's a transitioning kind of phrase. So because of all this, in other words, that he had received the answer from Hashem that he had been seeking, and also because he's now given thanks to Hashem. So now Daniel al Aryoch, he entered. The first al is the word for ba. This second al is like el. There's a mix-up, not exactly a mix-up. It's not as clear-cut that one is to and the other is upon or about in Aramaic as it is in Hebrew. So it's not a typo kind of thing where like you're typing away and then you don't remember and then you type it again. No, the first one means Daniel came, and the second al means to Aryoch. Remember, he's our Rav Tavachaya. He's the head executioner. Di mine malka, in case you don't remember that he's the head executioner, the pasuk comes and tells us, Di mani malka lahovda lachachime Babel, that the king had appointed to destroy all of the wise men of Babel. Zal, he went, v'chein amarle, l'chachime Babel al tahove. So he went in to Arioch, and this is what he said to him: you should not destroy the Chachmei Bavel. Rather, and the rather isn't in the verse. I keep wanting to put in another syllable like it would be in Hebrew, but it's not Hebrew. I have to read it like it's the Aramaic. Elni kadam malka, bring me, cause, right? This is the hifil. Cause me to come in. In other words, bring me before the king. Ufishra l'malka achave, and I will tell over. This is the shorsh for lahagid. I will tell over the solution to the king. Change of scene, or at least change of vantage point. So we had the samach. There's in when it's written in a scroll, there would be a short space, but like a space big enough for a word, rather than just the normal between word kind of thing, but a bigger space there. And so now instead of from Daniel's perspective, we're getting from Arioch's perspective. Dain Arioch behit v'hala hanehel l'Daniel kadam malka. So then Arioch, you can see the word bahala, which is what Rashi says it means. He's not quite sure what to do with the hit, so he just sort of ignores it. Again, it's a passive sort of thing. Everybody agrees he quickly. Okay, Hanel is this shorish. It's this hifil shorish. We have a lot of nuns that drop, what's called nun nofelet in Hebrew. And what you're getting here is the nuns are actually all showing up in the Aramaic of Daniel's time. So he brought Daniel before the king. Hanel Daniel kadam malka. V'chein amarle. And this is what he said to him. This is Arioch speaking to Nebuchadnezzar. Di hashkachat gavar min b'nei galuta di Yehud. Di fishra lemalka Yehoda. That there's been found. Remember that shin kaf chet does not mean forget. It means to be found or to find. Like shchichut is something which is frequency. Shachiach is something which happens often. So there is a Hebrew, at least a modern Hebrew, use of that shorish that's not related to forgetting, but is related to the Aramaic meaning of to be found. So the person, hashkachat gva, there's a person has been found among the children of the Galut, that's literal, okay, from the people who were exiled from Yehuda, who can make known the solution to the king. Anei Malka V'amar, so the king spoke up and he said to Daniel, he doesn't even speak to Arioch, like Arioch's now out of the picture. And it's such an interesting thing, right? And why did Arioch, by the way, do it in such a hurry? If you stop and think about it, he's been tasked by the king to start killing all of the Chachmei Bavel. And if you think about it, the king didn't say, wait until next week, gather them all up, put the fear into them, and then he said, do it now. And Arioch, on Daniel's say-so, is dragging his heels on it. And so he's in a rush because one of two things is going to happen. Either it's going to work, and then the king will maybe forget about killing off all of the Chachamim, and it'll be okay. or it's not going to work, and he can start by killing Daniel. In front of the kid, whatever. But he's just like, but he is mamash babela. It's not just that he's going quickly. He's in a kind of tight spot here, because he could get in real trouble with the king if the king thinks that he hasn't been doing the job that he was told to do. So anyway, but the king just, okay, fine, turns to Daniel, and he doesn't even speak to Arioch. There's nothing more. Arioch is like now out of the picture. Ana Malka v'amar Daniel, and speaks up and talks to Daniel. Di Shmei Belteshazzar, whose name is Belshazzar. Remember Ashpenaz, the Rav Sarisim in the first chapter had given Kasti names to Daniel and his chevra. So Daniel, the name that Daniel was given was Belteshazzar. And so he spoke to Daniel, but from the king's perspective, his name is Belshazzar. And he says, Ha'itach kahel, the hoda utani, chelma di chazit ufishre. Ha'im yesh itcha, or etzlacha, whatever. Kahel is like the word yacholet. Do you have the ability to make known to me the dream that I saw and its solution? And now Daniel Kadamalka Bamar. So Daniel speaks up before the king, and he says, Raza di Malka she'er lachachimin ashrin chatumin gazrin yachalin lahachvaya l'malka. This thing, this secret that the king has requested, chachamim, soothsayers and astrologers and people who practice various kinds of witchcraft. This word gazrin, we had not seen before, but Rashi just says, oh, that's another bal kishuf misugacher. It's yet another kind of somebody who's making use of various ways of tumah, of impurity, in order to try to understand what's going on in the world, to explain what's going on in the world. And Daniel says they are not able, or were not able, to tell this to the king. Now, the question is he puffing himself up, or like they couldn't do it, but I can? Or is he trying to get them off the hook? All right. And given that he had said to Arioch, Rav Tavachaya, not to kill them, hold off on that. I think I can solve this whole thing, and then maybe the king will think better of his decree. So we have to assume here that he's not saying this to the king like they couldn't and I can, but rather he's saying to the king, this is not something that's in their ability. You were asking of them something that they're not capable of doing. It's not that they were rebelling against you and refusing to do something that they should have done as loyal subjects of the king, but rather you were asking something that was outside their purview. Baram itai Allah bishmaya. However, there is a God in heaven, Galei Razin, who reveals secrets. V'hoda l'malcha Nebuchadnezzar ma'di leheve ba'achrit yomaya. And he made known to the king Nebuchadnezzar that which is going to be at the end of days. Chelmach v'chezve reshach al mishkavach d'nahu. And so that's what your dream and the visions of your head and the night, this is what it is. And it's not something that a natural philosopher, or it's not something that any of these soothsayers, fortune tellers, card readers, whatever, they can't deal with that because this is something that comes from God. All right. That's Daniel's sort of intro to what he's saying. And now he's going to, now he has another couple of psukim which continue to be an intro. He's not yet telling over the dream. Rather, he is, in a sense, he's building Nebuchadnezzar up. But he's also explaining to Nebuchadnezzar why this vision came to him before he actually tells him what the dream is. And he doesn't go on at great length, because if he did, the king would probably have gotten really angry. But he feels like he needs to put a little bit more introduction into place. So he says, Ant Malcha, you are the king. And so it's normal, because you're the king, that the ideas that you have when you're, at the end of the day, when you're going to bed, whatever, that they would arise. Sliku is from L'salek, L'mislak, actually, right? Because we're talking Aramaic, but it's not like in Hebrew where it means to remove, but it means to go up. There's a Hebrew verb which is sak, isak, to go up. It has dropped the lamed. That's about as close as Hebrew itself gets, so this is kind of a semi-false cognate here. But so sliku madi lehaveh. So your thoughts naturally arise. They're not lowly thoughts, and it's not the thoughts that a regular human being would have, right? These are thoughts that you have because you're the king. Okay. And so you wonder about, I'm making plans. I'm creating a kingdom. What's going to happen? What are going to be the consequences if I do this, if I do that? What will be the consequences in my day? What will be the consequences after me? How is this all going to play out? And that's a natural thing for a king to be wondering about. All right. V'galei razaya, and the one who reveals secrets, meaning this is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hodach madi lahave. He made known to you that which will be. That's what that which is coming. V'and la b'chachman. It's not ant. It's not and you. V'ana, and I. La b'chachman di'itai bi. It's not with the wisdom that I have within me. Min kol chaye raza dana Galilee. Rather, it's from the source of all life that this secret has been revealed to me. Okay, it's not because of any wisdom. It's not because I'm such a great guy. Remember, we said that first sentence could be he's puffing himself up. They couldn't, I can. And now he's saying, I couldn't do it either. I'm just a person. I couldn't do this. This is from God. All right. And so, lehen, therefore, al divrat di fishra lamalka yehodaun v'rayonei levivach tinda. So, and why was it made known to me? It wasn't made known to me because I was so important and I deserved to know these secrets about the king. Rather, it was made known to me because the whole reason God sent you the dream to begin with was because it was important for you to know it. And I'm just the channel. Okay. And so therefore, that's the cause that the solution for the king is being made known. And that the thoughts of your heart you will have knowledge about, and you'll be given solution to it. All right. And again, we have the Samach. So it's okay. Those two psukim went together. It was the unit. Daniel is continuing to some extent, he is buttering Nebuchadnezzar up. That's true to say, he's saying, oh, you're the king and you're so great. And so God's talking to you, but all right, but on the other hand, and he's deliberately not making himself big. He's not taking advantage of, and I know this and right. And this goes along with what we had read before, that giving wisdom to the wise. And what does it take in order to be wise is somebody who has anava, somebody who has humility, who realizes that they don't know everything. And so Daniel here is showing, Lamaisa, it is showing exactly that he is not somebody who takes credit for things that aren't of his own. Rather, he ascribes the credit to God. And now he's finally going to tell over the dream. And I know that, okay, so here's the dream. Ant Malka Chaze Havaita Va'alut Slaim Chad Sagi Tzalma Dikan Rav Zive Yatir Ke'em Lekavlach. I was keeping on reading till I got to this at Nachta, this sort of upside down wishbone thing here. But let's parse it out. You, the king, this is Hayita Ro'eh. You were seeing, not just that you saw, because why didn't it just say Chazyat? But Chaze Havaita, you were seeing. This was like a continuous kind of thing because you're the king, because this is where your mind is at. You think about political things, you think about your place in history, etc. And there's this single statue, which is enormous. Okay, a statue that was really big and extra shiny. The ziv, it's ziv. The glow that it gave off was yatir, was very much, was extra beyond what would be expected. Stood opposite of you, kaim lekavlach. Okay, the reve dechil. I believe this reve is it's like saying marehu. Its appearance was frightening. Nora. All right. So, and this would explain why Ruach Nebuchadnezzar titpa'eh, because it was something that was really big and it was frightening at the beginning. Okay. So what is this? Hu tzama reshe didahav tav chadohi udra ohi di ksaf ma'ohi v'yarchte di nachash. This is a statue. Reshe di dahav tav. It was, the head was of good gold. Chadohi. Here we're seeing the typical Aramaic Daled Zayin switch. So if you read it as Chazehu v'zro'av, okay, then you hear it in Hebrew, right? It's the chest and the upper chest and the arms. Di asher ksaf. They were of, or shel kesef, of silver. Ma'ohi v'yarchate di nachash. The abdomen, I'm pointing on myself, but seeing as there's nobody in the room with me and the camera doesn't go down that far, the abdomen and the thighs were of copper, like nechoshet. And so now you understand why it was gleaming, shining, really bright. There must have been some light, coming off of it. But these are all metals that get very, very shiny. Okay. Shakohi di frazel, raglohi minhon di frazel, uminhon di chasaf. the lower legs, the shokai. Okay, so the calves, or the lower part of the legs, were of barzel. It's the same, right? They're of iron. And the feet, and here we literally mean feet, not legs. Part of them were of iron, and part of them were of pottery. Cheres. So I found a picture, and it's going to a little bit give away. So it's very interesting. All the pictures that I found, I hope, I may have to reload the pictures. I already had them loaded, and I thought I would just be able to bring it up, but it's not coming that way. So I did a search for images of Nebuchadnezzar's statue. And although many of these pictures come from Christian websites, so with a grain of salt here, but they are actually see if I can make this one bigger. Whoa. I only want one. Okay. But it gives some, right? So you see the head is of gold, the chest and the arms are of silver, the abdomen and the thighs are of copper, the legs are of, it's iron, it's being shown as black. In almost all the pictures, it's being shown as black, and the feet are they're not entirely feet of clay. The feet are of both iron and clay. And then we haven't heard about this stone that's coming at the feet, but that's the next thing we're going to hear about. And I don't know, I was trying to see if I could make it bigger, but it's, here we go. Well, it made it a little bit bigger, not a lot bigger. And it's interesting because the interpretation that's given here is very similar to this is Chazal's interpretation. So even though it was, most of these images that I found, I think, are created for various Christian websites, this is the idea that the head of gold refers to Babylon, that the breast and arms of silver refer to the Medes and Persians, that the belly and thighs of brass or of copper, bronze, whatever, how you want to translate Nachash, or Nechoshet refers to Greece, the legs of iron refer to Rome. And then, so in this one, it says that the feet of iron and clay refer to the divided nations of Europe from the end of the Roman Empire to the present day. And in the end, there's going to be this rock that's going to destroy the whole thing. And we're going to hear about that in a minute here in Daniel. But that's the image that Daniel is describing to the king, and it's huge compared to the size of a person. So that's what he saw. Now, Chazei Havaita, you were seeing, you saw it. It stayed there in your image, this thing, which Daniel is going to explain to some extent about the succession of kingdoms, that until hit gezeret even dila bidayin, a stone comes and shatters this tselem, this statue, which was not thrown by hand. Umachat l'tzalma, and it strikes the statue al raglohi, on its feet, Difarzala v'chaspan, that are of iron and pottery, v'hadeket himon, and they shatter until they like it almost becomes like dust. It just shatters completely. Bedain daku chachada varzla chaspa nachasha chaspa dehava, and then the whole thing becomes dak, becomes very fine, all the same. Chachada, like one. Whether the iron, the pottery, it makes sense, right? Pottery, you think you shatter pottery, you end up with clay dust. Like that's not a problem. But that the iron becomes dust, that the bronze, that the silver, that the gold also become dust. Vahava ka'ur. So vahavo ka'ur. Now, min idre kait, unasha himon rucha, v'kol atar la hishtachach lahon. So, and then it was like something which is Arma Farshim, Mitzudat, Theon, Rashi, etc. say it's like lina air. So here, instead of the nun being put in, like we saw with min tinda, where it put a nun in, here they're leaving the nun out. From lina air is to like shake something out. So ka'ur, from the what do you do? Mi idre kite, at the summertime when you are threshing, and then after you thresh, you lift up the wheat, and the motes, the chaff blows away. It's the malacha of Shabbat called Zorah, Zayin Vav Resh Hey. So that's what they're doing. The idre kite are the threshing floors, the gorah of kites. Okay. And nasa himon rucha, and the wind carried it away. V'kol atar la hishtachach lahon, and everywhere that you look, kol makom, you can't find it. There was this huge tzela, there was this huge statue. The rock came and struck it, and it's gone. It's gone. It just blows away in the wind like it never was. Va'avna di machat l'tzalma havat l'tur rav umlat kol ara, and that stone which struck the statue becomes a great mountain. Tur is mountain, and it fills the entire world. Dana chelma. This is the dream. Ufishre neimar kadam malka, and the interpretation is now going to be said before the king. And Malka Melech Malchaya. Sounds like our songs on Shabbat, right? But it's not referring to Kadosh Baruch Hu, which is what we refer to when we sing that on Shabbos, but rather this is still Daniel speaking to Nebuchadnezzar. And he says, you are the king. You're the king of many kings, right? You're the first emperor, as it were. La shmaya malchute chisna v'takafa v'kara yahavlach, that the Lord of the heavens, right, Elokei Shemayim, yahavlach, gave to you a kingdom which is strong and mighty and kavadik, right? That's why you are this Melech Malchaya, because God gave this to you. And in fact, we see Nebuchadnezzar never takes this amiss that this is being ascribed. He has this sense that he is God's messenger in a way, right? He was sent by God to destroy the Beit HaMikdash. And he has a sense of this, and we're going to see it throughout the Sefer, that Nebuchadnezzar not only was not considered a foolish king, the way Achashverosh was. But he also doesn't deny God the way that Paro did. It doesn't mean that he's a good guy, okay? But it does mean that even though his people were idol worshipers, etc., he's not necessarily. He acknowledges that just as he is a king over kings, that at the very least that there's a God which is the God over all other powers. And so he's not going to get upset with Daniel for Daniel saying to him, it's God who gave you your kingdom. Ubekol di dairin b'nei Nasha chevat bara v'ov shmaya, and in every place that humans dwell, okay, dairin, like the word dira, and in Arabic, that's the word for to live, where people live, and chevat bara is wild animals, and ov shmaya, the birds of the heavens. Yahav biyadach, God has given all of this into your hand. V'hashltach b'kohon, and you have dominion over all of them. This is echoes of God speaking to Adam, Harisha. Okay? Is that, in a sense, somehow you, Nebuchadnezzar, have this capability, this possibility that you are this inheritor of the role of humanity in the world. And the question is, what are you going to do with it? It turns out he's not such a good guy, so he's not going to do with it what he was supposed to. And of course, it comes back to us. And that's actually part of what's in the dream. And he goes on, but he says, therefore, Daniel says to him, Anthu Resha di Dahava, you are this head of gold. In the Tselem, what does the head of gold represent? The head of gold represents you, represents Bavel, and represents you. Vatra takum malku achri ara minach, and after you, Batrach, Batar is after you will arise a different kingdom. Araminach, now, the way it was originally spelled, this word here we see down below, and it means haaretz. But that's not what it means. It's actually meant to be here as a verb, and that's why they took off the other ara. Ara means worse than you, less than you. And okay, think about in the tzelem, there's the head, and then there's below the head, there's the shoulders and the arms, etc. That's lower than the head. So therefore, what does that mean? That means that the okay, so it's less than you. And then Mahu Klita, third one, Achari, another third kingdom, Dinachasha, which is of the bronze, Di Tishlat B'cho Ara. That also it's going to rule over the entire world. In other words, there's empire after empire. This is not something about small little local city-states. This is about empires. And then, okay, so we've now taken care of the head, the chest and the arms, the abdomen and the thighs. And now we're getting to Umahu Rivya, the fourth kingdom, Teve Tekifa Kavarzla. It's going to be as strong as iron. Kol kavel di varzla mahadek v'chashel kolo kafarzla. Kola. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm going to stop there. Kol kavel, all of this, why? Ba'avur she, because barzel, iron, is mahadek v'chashel kola, that it gets beaten. In other words, you want to make something out of iron, you have to heat it up. You put it on the, okay, I know the Hebrew word because Rashi uses it. It's called a kurnas. But it's the blacksmith's anvil. That's the word. Okay, you put it on the anvil and you beat at it, and to temper the steel, temper the iron, and so that's what this fourth kingdom is going to be like. And ukafarzala di mara kol elaine tidak v'terol, and just like steel, which gets heated and forged and tempered and all of these things, that's what this fourth kingdom is going to be like. Now, after that, remember, that explains everything up to the part where you have the feet that have some clay, etc. And it also hasn't yet explained in any way the stone that shows up. So yeah, I have about 10 minutes left. So looks like we're going to make it through. And like I said, I'm kind of racing through it, and I'm not giving what Chazal say about any of these things, because next week I'm going to give us the Mara, and because he ties it to Hanukkah specifically, and so that seems like an appropriate thing to do the week before Hanukkah. We will have a break, by the way, the week of Hanukkah. I'm not going to teach on a night when we have to bench lift, etc. And then we'll start up again, and maybe we'll look at what some of the other Meforshim bring besides the Maral, if they're different, and then we will continue with the stories. Okay, so taking a short breather, the dream continues. Daniel, and mind you, Daniel was just like talking. This was not, he didn't stop to leave room. He's just like, and this is what it is, and then this, and then this, and then this. V'di chazaita, and that you saw, raglaya ve'etzba'ota, the feet and its toes, minhon chsaf di pecher, or minhon parzel, that part of the toes, right, were this pottery of clay, and part of them were of iron. Mahu pliga teheve, that it's going to be a divided kingdom. Min nitzbata diversala lehaveba, but it's going to have some of the solidity, the strength. It's not exactly the word for strength, but solidity of iron. It'll be in it. All of this because, right, kol kavel di, ba'avur, in order that chazaita farzla ma'arav b'chasov tina. All of this, right, because really and truly, you saw that the iron was mixed with the clay, but we know that iron and clay don't really mix. And so the fact that you have iron and clay together, and those are not, you can make something, okay, copper and other metals together can be smelted together, and you get stronger alloys. And the same thing with iron, but not by mixing it together with clay. So this is what you saw. And the meaning of it is that these things are going to be divided because they can't stick together, right? The etzba'at, and that's exactly, now Daniel's making that even more clear. The etzba'at raglaya min hon parzel min on chsaf. And remember these toes of the feet, that part of it's iron, part of it's pottery. Min ktsat malchuta teheve tekifa, umina teheve tvira. Part of this final kingdom that's the Iron Kingdom, the Barzel Kingdom. Part of it is going to remain strong and possibly violent, not clear. And part of it will be Tevira, will be fragile, breakable. Oops. Okay, doesn't want to move that way, so I'll make it move this way. There we go. V'di chazaita farzla marav v'chasavtina midarvin lehavon bizra nasha v'la lehavon davkin dana in dana. And the fact that you saw the iron, as it were, mixed with the pottery is to tell you that they're going to, the races of men are going to intermix, but they won't, as it were, okay? But they don't really intermix, he says, because they can't stick to one another. They can't achieve any kind of achdut, any kind of real brotherhood and real oneness. They remain divided by sects. They remain divided by nations, right? Nationalism and racism and all these kinds of things are going to keep the people divided from one another because they can't all join together belonging to one nation the way that iron and clay also cannot join together. And hey, kdi farzala la mitarav in chasva, just like I explained, this is because iron does not really intermix. You saw something that looked like it was intermixed on the statue. It looked like those toes that were of clay fit, just came out of the same foot as the toes that were of iron. And so it looks like it's all one thing, but really and truly, if you think about it, that they don't, and you can't adhere one to the other. And so too, that's what it's going to be like at the bottom, at the end. Uvyumehon di malchaya inon yakim elashmaya mahu di la'almin. And in the days of all of these kingdoms, or in other words, at the end of the days of all these kingdoms, the Lord of the heavens is going to establish a kingdom which is forever. La titchaba, which will not be destroyed. Umalchuta la'am achran la tishtave. And that the kingdom of another nation will not come to replace it. Okay, or you can read it as, and the kingdom for this other people which will not be cut off. Depends on how you want to read Tishtaveh. Tadik v'tesef kol ilan malchavata v'hi takum la'almaya. It, on the one hand, it's going to, because this is what's represented by that stone, which grows into being a mountain which covers the entire earth. And this is a reference to Melech HaMashiach, obviously. And so we'll talk about that more next week. And so it's going to Tadik, it's going to, this business of breaking apart, and to save here is to put an end to all of those kingdoms that were before it. The silver and the gold, the copper and the iron and the chasva and the pottery, all of them, which are going to, right, the ones that are going to just blow away like chaff in the air. So they're going to be gone. And this kingdom, this stone, is going to be established forever. I even have a couple more minutes. Okay. So, kol kaver di chazaita di mitura it gzeret even. So matzah, right, that you saw. So with respect to this, that you saw that from a mountain came forth this stone, Delabiyadine, that was not thrown by hand. It just, as it were, the stone was moving on its own. V'hadeket parzela nachash chaspa kasfa dahava. Okay, and it shattered into little bits, the iron and the copper and the pottery and the silver and the gold. Ella Rav Hodal Malka, the great God made this known to the king. Medi leheve achredna, that which is going to happen after this. In other words, you're here now, but then there's going to be this succession of other kinds of kingdoms until in the very end there will be established something not from these kingdoms, but something from God himself that is going to take over the whole world. Yatziv chelma umeheman pishrei, and yatziv is a word for truth. So the dream is a true dream, and its solution is a trustworthy, believable solution. Okay. So I got through the dream and I showed you the image, which already gave away a little bit about how we tend to understand this. And then, do I have time? I really don't. Okay, I'm just going to say goodbye. Say, everybody should be happy and healthy. And I think it's really amazing, by the way, anybody who learned with me last week in the Kedushat Levi, we talked about the meaning. We traced that word Evan through Parshat Vayetze. And the Evan Roshah, and the Evan Misham Ro'eh. I don't remember the next word, but the point is that it was Evan stands for Yaakov. Even in Sefer Bereshit, Evan stands for Yaakov, and so here too, Evan stands for Yaakov. And so it's really nice. Like I've said before, it's really nice for me when I'm learning in one place and when I'm learning in another place, and you think that they're not at all related, and they're so related, and it always comes together. So great joy. And I look forward to learning with you all next week. Thank you so much. Let's stop the share. And stop the recording.